Welcome to the first weekly devlog for Context Found, an organization dedicated to making personal information management delightful. This week we'll be going over Gecko Construction, a DIY commercial construction application. It's for managing projects. If you're, say, a business owner with more gumption than money, and you're DIYing way more of the projects than is sensible, like myself and my wife, Gecko Construction is going to help you keep those projects, because if you're not using some sort of system already, spreadsheets, Microsoft Project, after about the 5th or 7th or 10th project, it starts to get a bit overwhelming. And I found it really helps to organize things out and get your hands around what you have and some of the dependencies between them. And that's why I built Gecko Construction. Why Gecko? Because it's for people that stick to it. The application is actually quite robust. I'm currently running it as a progressive web app. It's Flutter based, so I can eventually push it out to be an iOS and Android app. Currently I'm running it as a PWA to just get it up off the ground. But it is running on Firebase as a back end. So all of these logins, both email password and the Google sign-in, are legit and fully functional. The first thing that you're greeted with is projects. And these conceptually are for, exactly as they say on the tin, organizing work around a scope of work, a project that you'll be doing. And it's going to be a bit of an experiment to see what level you do this, because there's no hierarchy right now. All these projects are peer level and don't have any children. And I think that's a good place to start, and it can be worked within. The next item type that we have is an ask, and this is an interesting one for, excuse me, man. There's some inspiration here from David Allen's Getting Things Done. So the ask are items that you're going to have to go out and find more information from an outside resource. For example, the primary breaker placement. This is something I have to ask the electrician. So we start to see this project and person organization kind of tags that are associated with it as a matter of organization. But I have to ask the electrician whether we can move the breaker panel, the second breaker panel, over by the bathrooms. The next item is another David Allen delight, which is waiting on, the waiting item, which means that I am waiting. I placed an order for these track light nuts, and they are not in yet. They're just being shipped. So I keep track of that here, that it's not in my bucket, but I don't lose track of it. The next item type is decide. And these are things, there's quite a few of them, where we have to make decisions on which direction that we're going to go with. For example, we have to figure out and decide where we're going to store glasses for customers. Now, this is under decide, but we can also do something and move these items between the different types. So if we figure out that we have to, figure out how tall our glasses are or something, then we need to move that over to an ask task, an ask item. Then we can do that as well. And then it'll pop over to where the glasses are being stored under the ask tab. So there's that dynamic jumping around of an item. The next category is one we spend a lot of time with, which is buying things. For example, the hex lights that we purchased for the brewery space were under the buy tab, but actually I need to update this. Not only were we waiting on them previously, but they actually arrived. So we have the status here that I can flip to closed, and when I save that, boop, removes it from the list with a nice little pop-up there. And that's why we have the active and inactive tag here, so that we can go back in, and if we needed to make it active again, we can. So there's this concept of keeping your space clean to only the things that are important to you right now. Another item is do items. These are straightforward. You don't have to ask anyone anything. You don't have to make a decision. You just know what you need to do and you have to do it. For example, I have to drill the bolt holes in the steel. Pretty straightforward, at least in concept. And the final item that we have is people. And this is where you have contacts that you can keep track of. For example, each of the trades, and you can have contact info, email, all sorts of good stuff like that. The power in having contacts like this is in, as we may have seen, associating. So if I say, what main breakers do I need? That's with the electrician that I need to ask. And a feature that I think is the big value on this application in really focusing on the context that you're working within of the project is that if I go to people, I can filter by the electrician, and that brings them up here at the top. And we see that the only items down here are the asks, and we have 3 different asks that are questions that we need to ask the electrician. And that can be unfiltered. But if we go to me, I have 3 decisions and a do item. And if I clear that filter, it goes back to viewing all the items in each of the tabs. The other item type that can be filtered on are projects, not surprisingly. So if we go to bifold doors, this is a big project that's hot and heavy right now. So we see we have a question out. We're waiting on the bolts. We have nothing to buy right now, but we do have 4 decisions. So this concept of filtering down to projects and people to work within that context is core to really helping you sift down from however many dozens of items. I've only just begun to put real items in this. So there's going to be more projects and a ton more items that'll be outstanding. And that filtering down to who you're talking to or which project you're working on is really important to keeping sane. So that's this week's update on Gecko Construction. It's the current project that I'm not only actively developing, but also using every day. And that's the real pleasure that I've found when you really click with an app, is when you are using it and you're getting value out of it and you're finding new features, and just the list keeps growing. Not major stuff, but kind of this dopamine drip of, oh, I want this to work this way. And then you put it on the list, and then that evening you go into Cursor and you add it. And then the next day it's just that much more functional. And it's a nice feedback cycle on it. But I wanted to give you a real background to the core functionality of Gecko Construction. Now let's talk about the challenges I had this week. If we go back into the app, we've been seeing a lot when you click on an item, you have this edit page for changing details on it with standard cancel, save, and delete with confirmation kind of functionality. This is also used if I use the fab to manually create new projects and other items. So if I go to buy a hot tub and I save that, under buy, we have, ooh, and here's an error. Well, that happens sometimes. As I mentioned, this is all backed by Firebase, so these records are actually in Firestore, the NoSQL database. So, fortunately, if I find the offending test record and we go back to the app, hopefully I reload and we are good to go. Excellent. I marked that down as a bug on it. As I was saying, I'm currently using the manual addition, but the new feature that I've been working on is the agentic, the natural language enter. So if I want to say, buy a beefier hammer drill and submit that, I wanted to go out, get a completion from an LLM, and come back with a tool call that will create, or at least suggest creating, a new buy item with beefier new hammer drill as the item. That's been the challenge this week, is I am trying to make this LLM call for prototyping, it's fine to make a call directly to OpenAI or to Anthropic, but it's not secure because if someone were to decompile your app, the API key is right in there. While it's nice to be working fully in Dart, since it's a Flutter app and all the logic is living in your code structure, it's just not secure. Previously, I used cloud functions, Firebase cloud functions, to make the call. But in this app, I was thinking I'll use Google Vertex, which is their bundle wrap, easy to use system for making API calls. You can set up, I think, prompts and different models in the back end and just easily configure it. And supposedly there was a secure way to make a call from the mobile device right from the app up to the cloud, but to do so without compromising your key. So I set out switching over to trying to utilize Vertex, and it got gummed up and I just couldn't get it to work. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do what I did before. I will set up on Firebase Cloud Functions, and really kind of got mired down in it. I've had to go back and manually look at some of the structures and try and simplify things. I have a proper system prompt. I have it building all of the projects, all the items into a context and passing those in, as well as the user's request that they're putting in the box in natural language. And I'm right now to the point where I'm getting completions, which is good, but they're not proper tool calls. And previously, I've dealt with tool calls, so I know I'll crack this one. It's just been the friction on where I'm leaving off this week. Hopefully, for next week's update, I will have the natural language at least going for simple requests. Of course, the next thing will be to do multiple, add a project, do this, do that kind of things. More dynamic behavior that makes it more worthwhile to have that text box on there. We'll see how far I get though, because it looks like I'm going to have my hands full with putting these bifold doors in. I appreciate your time and your interest. This will be a weekly devlog to update on different projects, not just this one, but anything else in the context found stable. The grander vision that we're experimenting with is how do we apply large language models to tangibly make your and my lives better. We're flooded with information. We wear so many hats, have so many obligations and roles. How do we manage all of that in a more delightful and straightforward method? How do we get the large language model power that we have to organize automatically all the things that are streaming into us, everything that we're working with, and also retrieve exactly what we need when we need it, when we're working within a given context, so that we may ever work in context. Of course, subscribe if you want to make sure that the next update doesn't slip through the cracks. I'll be going over, I have a lot of experimentation in flight on different ways that we can do this. The tag-based organization for Gecko is just one of the approaches. I'd love to see you on the journey of figuring out how we can apply this to make the world a better place. And I'll see you next week.